All right, so you're with us again, and you know the drill. No time to waste. We get that. You want the intel on what's shaping our future, energy-wise, right?
Right to the point. Love it.
Well, let's ditch that old hydrogen economy idea, at least in its purest form.
Yeah, it's evolving. Definitely evolving.
Research is pointing to something way bigger. Power to X economy, they're calling it.
Catchy, right.
It grabs you, for sure. So for years, we kept hearing hydrogen was the answer. Like it was going to fuel everything, cars, industry, the whole shebang.
The silver bullet, yeah.
But the paper we're diving into today, get this title, The Role of Electricity-Based Hydrogen in the Emerging Power to X Economy.
A mouthful, but kind of sums it up nicely.
Saying things have shifted. Big time.
Renewable electricity, that's the core now. Hydrogen, it's vital, but it's playing a different role. More like a crucial supporting act.
Okay, so we got to rewind a bit, right? This hydrogen economy concept, it had some serious hype back in the day. It wasn't just a passing fad.
No, definitely not.
This paper even mentions John Bockris. He's like the godfather of the term, way back when. What was the original vision, the big dream?
Well, they wanted to turn the world upside down, basically.
Dramatic. I like it.
A complete shift they were talking about. From, the hydrocarbon society we all know and maybe don't love so much anymore.
To a hydrogen society. Snappy.
Yeah, it had a ring to it. Hydrogen was the clean alternative to all those fossil fuels.
Yeah.
Especially for transportation. Remember those fuel cells everyone was buzzing about?
Oh, yeah, future of cars and all that.
Exactly. Although, fun fact, the paper mentions Bockris himself later kind of admitted a pure hydrogen economy might be, well, a bit of a stretch.
So even the godfather had second thoughts.
It seems so. Shows how things evolve, right? And it's interesting, the paper points out it wasn't all about renewable hydrogen from the get-go either.
Really? I thought that was the whole point.
Well, early on, they were considering all sorts of sources. Nuclear, solar, wind, sure.
Yeah.
But get this, the idea of a hydrogen economy based on fossil fuels, that stuck around for a while.
Hold on, that sounds kind of counterproductive, doesn't it? Like, what's the point?
Right. It's like, making hydrogen from methane or coal and then using that to create other fuels. The paper doesn't come right out and say it, but it's kind of like, hello, are we really solving the problem here?
Swapping one fossil fuel problem for another. Okay, so the paper also dives into hydrogen to X. What's that all about? Break it down for us non-scientists.
So hydrogen to X, think of it as a practical fix. Handling pure hydrogen, storing it, moving it around, it's tricky.
Sounds like a headache.
Bit of a one, yeah. So the X here, it's like a stand-in for other stuff you can make from hydrogen, other energy carriers and chemicals. Things like, methanol, ammonia, these liquid organic hydrogen carriers.
Gotcha. More manageable stuff.
Exactly. Easier to deal with. And the thinking was, hey, maybe we can even use the old fossil fuel infrastructure for some of this, like for transport and heating and whatnot.
Clever, repurposing what we already have.
Right. Makes sense on the surface, but the authors of this paper, they're suggesting hydrogen to X kind of missed the bigger picture.
Missed the boat on something.
In a way, yeah. The paper's saying they didn't fully appreciate how fast batteries were improving and getting cheaper, and also the basic efficiency of just using electricity directly in a lot of cases.
Cutting out the middleman.
Exactly. Why go through all the trouble of making hydrogen and then converting it into another fuel like for a car when you could just have a battery-powered electric vehicle? Often more efficient and, as the paper highlights, increasingly affordable these days.
Okay, so that brings us to the power to X economy, the star of the show. What's behind this big shift in thinking? What's driving it?
Well, the paper lays out a few crucial things. First off, those price drops in renewable energy tech, they've been huge. Solar, wind, batteries, way cheaper than they used to be.
Can't argue with that. We're seeing it everywhere.
Right. And the paper's also banking on costs coming down for electrolyzers. Those are what you use to make hydrogen from electricity and water, and also for technologies that suck CO2 right out of the air.
Carbon capture, getting a lot of buzz these days.
For good reason, this paper argues. Because all this is making renewable electricity the main player, the most cost-effective way to clean up our energy system.
Makes sense. Cheaper and cleaner. Win-win. And the paper's pretty clear. Where we can just use renewable electricity directly, we should, right?
Spot on. The research is very clear on that. For a ton of stuff, heating buildings, some industrial processes, cars, even desalination, just plugging into renewable electricity. It's the most efficient way to go. And that's where batteries are awesome for storing that electricity.
But as the paper acknowledges, we can't electrify everything, can we? Some things are just too hard to plug in.
You got it. This paper reckons about 40% of our energy and raw material needs, we can't directly electrify them.
So what, like 40% of what we need to run the world? That's a big chunk.
It is, yeah. Think of long-haul shipping, airplanes, the chemical industry making steel, tough nuts to crack. And that's where hydrogen made from renewable electricity steps in. Can't live without it, according to this research. In some industrial processes, you can use it directly. But a lot of the time, the paper's saying it'll get converted into what they call e-fuels.
Like e-kerosene for planes?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or e-chemicals, like e-ammonia and e-methanol, for ships and industry.
Okay, starting to see the power to X picture here.
It's all connected, yeah. And the paper brings up this idea of sector coupling.
Sector coupling, now there's a new term. Sounds like different industries working together, right?
That's the gist, yeah. This paper is basically saying we need to spot those win-wins between different parts of the energy system and industry. Like they mentioned naphtha, you can get that as a byproduct when you're making e-fuels through this thing called the Fischer-Tropsch process.
Fischer-Tropsch, that's a mouthful.
Don't worry too much about the name. What matters is it's basically turning hydrogen and CO2 into liquid fuels. And the naphtha from that, it's actually valuable for the chemical industry. So, you're killing two birds with one stone.
Smart. Using what would otherwise be waste.
Exactly. Reducing the need to make those chemicals in other ways that maybe use more energy or aren't so clean.
So to recap, batteries are like the everyday workhorses, storing electricity. But hydrogen, it's more the long-term, big picture balancer for the whole system, especially since you can store a lot of it underground, and electrolyzers are pretty flexible, like the paper mentions.
Yep, that's a great summary. Batteries will handle most of the direct electricity storage needs for sure, but hydrogen, it's like our safety net, our buffer. You make it when renewable electricity is plentiful and store it for when it's not. This paper really emphasizes that, helps to smooth out those ups and downs with renewables.
Okay, let's talk scale for a minute. This paper throws some really big numbers around when it comes to future hydrogen demand. What are we talking in concrete terms?
All right, brace yourself. By 2050, according to this paper, we're looking at needing over 61,737 TWh LHV of hydrogen to fully ditch fossil fuels in energy and industry. Huge number.
61,737 TWh LHV. I can't even picture that.
It's mind-boggling, right? But here's the kicker. The paper stresses this. Most of that hydrogen, like 81%, it's not being used directly as hydrogen. It's a stepping stone to create other power-to-X products. Those e-fuels, e-chemicals we talked about.
So it's like an ingredient, not the final product.
Exactly. A crucial ingredient, though. And to make all that hydrogen through electrolysis, well, you need a ton of electricity.
Can't make something from nothing. How much electricity are we talking specifically?
This paper estimates a whopping 88,223 TWh of electricity needed for electrolysis by 2050. Just put that in perspective. That's a significant chunk of all the electricity we'll be generating in the future. Really drives home the point the paper's making about renewable electricity being the foundation of everything.
Okay, so we need a ton of hydrogen. And to make that, we need a ton of renewable electricity.
Got it. Now, how's all that hydrogen demand going to break down across different sectors? The paper gives a projection for 2050, right?
They do. It's about 59% for the wider energy system, so that includes making those synthetic fuels. Then about 7% for steel making, and about 34% for the chemical industry.
Got it. Energy, steel, chemicals, the big players.
Right. And to actually make all that hydrogen, we need the capacity to produce it. Electrolyzer capacity, they call it. We're talking a massive increase between now and 2050. Like this paper throws out a specific number.
It is with it.
16.7 TWH2 LHV of total electrolyzer capacity needed by 2050. It's a huge jump from where we are now, that's for sure. The authors are definitely not sugarcoating it.
So scaling up, big time. Big time. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of those e-fuels and e-chemicals. The paper actually gives us estimated demand numbers for stuff like e-methane and e-ammonia in 2050. They've got a table, Table 1, that lays it all out. What are some of the key figures there?
Yeah, so Table 1 is really interesting. It's showing us we'll need a lot of e-methane, e-Fischer-Tropsch liquids, and naphtha, e-ammonia, and e-methanol in 2050. All those are essential, as the paper emphasizes, for decarbonizing the tough sectors where using electricity directly just isn't feasible.
And making all those e-fuels and e-chemicals, it needs CO2, right? Like a lot of it. The paper mentions over 9 billion tons needed in 2050.
9 billion tons. Yeah, that's the figure. Big question is, where's all that CO2 going to come from? And of course, it needs to be sustainable.
Can't just be pulling it out of thin air, can we?
Well, actually, that's part of the solution. The paper talks about capturing CO2 from industrial sources, those places where it's being produced anyway, like cement plants. Can't avoid it there, so might as well capture it.
Makes sense. But, and this is key, that won't be enough. The paper's very clear on that. We're going to need direct air capture technologies big time. Those are what suck CO2 right out of the atmosphere.
So even with capturing CO2 from industry, we're still going to need to pull it out of the air to meet demand.
That's what the analysis in this paper shows. The authors are definitely not downplaying the challenge. And oh, by the way, the paper mentions we need other stuff too, like nitrogen for making ammonia, but that's easy. We can get that from the air.
Okay, so CO2, challenge accepted. Now, one thing I found cool, this paper doesn't just present its own findings, it compares them to what other researchers and organizations are saying about future hydrogen demand. What's the takeaway there?
Right. The authors look at a bunch of other studies, all focused on 100% renewable energy scenarios. And they find there's a pretty wide range of projections for e-hydrogen demand. What that tells us, the paper sort of implies, is that there's a lot of uncertainty. Makes sense. We're talking about a massive global energy shift. It's tough to predict exactly how it'll unfold.
So different models, different assumptions, different results. Okay, so how do these 100% renewable scenarios, often quite ambitious, stack up against what big institutions like the IEA and IRENA are saying? The paper touches on that too, right?
It does. And it's interesting. The paper kind of labels the IEA's World Energy Outlook and IRENA's outlook as pessimistic compared to some of those more gung-ho 100% renewable scenarios. They're less bullish on hydrogen. Their projections for 2050 are lower. So different levels of, I guess, optimism, or maybe just different ways of looking at how fast things will change.
So a range of viewpoints on the hydrogen future. Makes sense, it's complex. What about using e-hydrogen in sectors like steel and chemicals specifically? The paper mentions that's less well understood compared to the broader energy system.
Yeah, the authors are honest about that. They're basically saying, look, when it comes to e-hydrogen for steel and chemicals, there's not as much solid research, not as much agreement on what the future holds. They reference some work by Agora Industry and the Wuppertal Institute on steel making and some other estimates for chemicals, but yeah, it's clear from this research that we need to dig deeper into this.
More research needed, the classic scientist answer. Okay, now this paper throws another term at us, solar to X economy. They use it when talking about the global south. What's the distinction there?
It's all about location, location, location. The authors are saying for a lot of countries, especially those sunny ones, which, let's face it, are mostly in the global south, solar to X economy is a more accurate label. Why? Because they've got sunshine galore.
Solar power central.
Exactly. And often, that solar energy isn't being used to its full potential, which means they can produce super cheap electricity, the basis for all this e-fuel and e-chemical magic.
So it's like they've got a built-in advantage.
Big time. And the paper argues this could be a game changer for these regions. They're expecting huge growth in electricity demand as their economies develop. So what they can do, the authors are suggesting, is skip the whole dirty fossil fuel phase and jump right into a clean, renewable-powered future.
Leapfrogging right over the old tech. Love it.
It's a great opportunity, for sure. And the paper specifically calls out Chile and Egypt. They've got the potential to be major players in the e-fuel and e-chemical export game.
So we could see a whole reshaping of the global trade in fuels and chemicals?
The paper definitely hints at that.
Okay.
It's talking about a fundamental restructuring of those supply chains. And the authors think this could be a good thing. More diverse supply, better energy security, economic benefits spread out more fairly, stronger international partnerships.
Sounds pretty utopian, but I guess we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, lots of ifs still. But the potential is huge. Another interesting thing the paper points out, they don't think we'll be shipping a lot of pure hydrogen around the world.
Why not?
Well,
Seems like it'd be in high demand everywhere.
it's about practicality. Moving pure hydrogen, whether through pipelines or as a liquid, it's expensive and you lose a lot of energy in the process. The paper is saying it makes more sense to ship the stuff made from hydrogen, those e-ammonia, e-methanol, e-liquids we talked about. They're more energy dense, easier to deal with, and maybe even eLNG, that's liquefied natural gas made with renewable energy. That's a possibility too.
So less hydrogen highways, more e-fuel shipping lanes.
Something like that, yeah. And even for industries like steel, which need a lot of energy, the paper's suggesting things might get reorganized, like with this idea of a decomposed value chain.
Decomposed. Sounds a bit grim.
No, not in a bad way. Just means the most energy-intensive parts of steelmaking, the parts that could use hydrogen directly, those might move to places with cheap, abundant renewable energy. Then you'd ship the semi-finished stuff to other places for the final processing.
So following the energy, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The paper even mentions Australia as a potential big exporter, not just of e-fuels and e-chemicals, but also those e-materials like steel and aluminum made sustainably.
Australia, the e-everything powerhouse. Okay, so we've covered a lot. What are the key takeaways from all this, the big picture?
The paper hammers this home. It all starts with renewable electricity. Got to get that clean and plentiful first before we can really scale up all this power to X stuff.
Yeah.
So hydrogen, it's essential, but it's the sidekick, not the superhero.
The Robin to electricity's Batman.
Haha, yeah, something like that. It's the crucial link, helping us convert those electrons from renewable sources into the fuels and chemicals we need for those hard-to-electrify sectors.
Okay, so bottom line, the paper's saying power to X economy is a better, more accurate way to describe the future than just hydrogen economy.
That's their big argument, yeah. Power to X economy, it captures the whole picture. It's about renewable electricity running the show, both directly and as the source for those hydrogen-based fuels and chemicals.
So full circle, we ask hydrogen economy or power to X economy. Seems like this research has a clear answer.
Renewable electricity is the driving force, the core of the transition. And hydrogen, it's the key enabler, helping us fully decarbonize everything.
Makes you think, doesn't it? This whole power to X future, it's not just about technology. The paper's pointing to a massive global shift, maybe even a power shift towards countries swimming in renewable resources. It's a whole new world, really.
What do you think? What kind of geopolitical and economic landscape might emerge from all this? That's something to ponder, for sure. If you're as intrigued by the power to X economy as we are and all the details laid out in this paper, we highly recommend you check out the study itself or look into some related research. It's a fascinating rabbit hole to go down.